Josh Minor Dialogue Series, which is something we've been doing for 7 years, I think, and it's a tribute to documenting the history of experiential education, specifically the history of experiential education in the Northeast and those folks who have influenced leaders in the area. And we started this series those years back because we had a fireside chat with Josh Minor here at the regional conference, and he subsequently died the next year, and someone said, wouldn't it have been terrific had we documented that interaction at the conference, and hence the Josh Minor Dialogue Series was born. This year, I'm really excited to introduce Christine Norton and Hendricks Davis. Christine will be interviewing Hendricks for our Josh Minor Dialogue Series this year. I'm excited to introduce Christine. Christine's a really good friend of mine. She's an assistant professor at the University of Texas, San Marcos, by way of Colorado and Chicago and Kansas and a variety of other places.
New Jersey.
And New Jersey. Anyway, so she and Hendricks have a long relationship, which they're going to talk about tonight, and you'll get some insight into their relationship. But she came all the way here from the Mid-South region to represent. Give it up for the Mid-South region today. She's a volunteer servant leader as well, and she's the chair of the Mid-South region, among other things, and is the upcoming Therapeutic Adventure Professional Group chair of AEE. So let's welcome Christine Norton. I got it. Okay, hang on.
You gotta, whoa. You gotta plug in, tuck it in. A lot of steps. Is this part being videotaped? Okay. It's all good. I've gotten a lot of wisdom from all of you already at this conference. When in doubt, give them your heart. Thank you, Jim Grout. I'm going with that. Keith King, just be yourself. I should maybe apologize then in advance. I don't know about that one. I am honored to be a part of this tradition. And before I talk a little bit about how I know this amazing man, I want to talk about how I know Josh Minor, because this is the Josh Minor Dialogue Series. I have had the privilege of working at the Voyager Outward Bound School for about 10 years, over summer seasons, as a consultant, as a course director, now as a researcher. And one summer, when I was at staff training, Josh Minor came to speak to us in the Pay Building. Any of you been to Ely? To Voyager? Okay, right here. Love it. So you've been in the Pay Building. Josh Minor and I are standing in the Pay Building. And it's actually the night before he is speaking to us. And if you've ever been to Voyager, you know that the staff there, they like to start off the season with a big old party. And so there are these lines of tables set up, and everyone has a rousing game of quarters going on. I know, it sounds kind of old school, right? I'm dating myself here. And Josh Minor is looking at these young experiential educators doing this, playing this new game, not invented by Carl Ronke, I don't think. And he comes over to me, of all people, and he says, "What are they doing?" And I said, "Well, they're playing a game. It's called quarters." "What is this game?" And so I got to teach Josh Minor how to play quarters. I mean, really. So that's my first connection to Josh Minor, and I love that, and I cherish that memory. In the morning, he got up to speak to us. And at the time, as you all know, so many of our programs have been based on the Outward Bound model. And this was at a time of dwindling enrollment in Outward Bound, and people were lamenting that fact, and Josh Minor said, don't worry about it. He goes, it's a good thing, all these programs developing. He said, remember, we're all in the kid business. That was his language. We're all in the kid business. Now, what led me to working at Outward Bound was a prior experience, working for the Princeton Blairstown Center. Right here, give it up. Woo! Thank you, that was rousing. Good work. I was going to do jump, shake your booty, but another time. At the Princeton Blairstown Center, I got the best introduction to blending experiential education with social justice that I have ever had. And so it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Hendricks Davis, who, when I was hired at the Princeton Blairstown Center, was our executive director and was really formative in my social justice education. I want to say one thing. When I was flying here, I read a quote by Salman Rushdie from Midnight's Children. He said, "In order to understand just one human being, you have to swallow the entire world." And so I just want to say that what we are committed to is swallowing the entire world this evening in understanding the life and the professional and personal journey and wisdom of Hendricks Davis. Because if you've ever spoken with Hendricks, he doesn't make it about himself. He makes it about you and the world. And so there are no topics that are off the table. We may talk about politics, we may talk about religion, race, gender, sexual orientation, because in order to understand just one life, we have to swallow the entire world. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Hendricks Davis!
You want me to carry that over? No. Do you want the other two as well?
Nope. Oh. Yeah. It's your magic box. Here, you want to put it there?
We'll put it here.
Okay. We have one. Hi.
Good. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. This is really exciting.
I'm happy to be here.
I
I'm
am.
excited as well.
I'm honored. It's amazing how things come full circle. You knew me when I was kind of a punk, and here we are now. I'm still kind of.
You mean
So-
in the sort of cultural category, the spiky hair, that sort of?
In the sense that, you know, they used to say at Blairstown, you must wear closed-toed shoes, and I was the girl that tried to run around barefoot. This is a patient man.
Yeah.
So I knew you at Blairstown, but I'm really interested to know your roots in this field, in experiential education.
Okay. Well, I'd be happy to share those with you. A couple of people have asked me that. In fact, someone asked me what made me get into experiential education. And I said, well, do you want me to tell you now, or do you want to wait until later? He said, I'd like to know now. And I said, well, I'll give you the thumbnail sketch. What made me get into experiential education? My mother. Quite seriously, she didn't make me, but she, because of who she was as a person, a mother, an educator, a person who really, really loved children. That was my entree into experiential education. When I was very young, I put a part of this in the little description that's in the brochure. She took me to the place that she worked. There's so much more to tell about her and the background that it's almost like, you know, I need to not only be here for an hour or so, but for, you know, at least a couple of days, or write the book, which I'm planning to do. She was technically legally blind at the time that she took this job, working as a teacher, as an instructor. She had glaucoma. I have glaucoma. She had arthritis. I have arthritis. She had this strange disease. Some of you might have heard of it. It's called pancreatitis. Have you ever heard of that disease? Pancreatitis. What is it?
Pack rat.
Pancreatitis.
So you can't die.
You can't, but you can't die from it unless the weight of the pack actually winds up breaking your back or making you not be able to get out of the gorge or whatever. But she kept everything, and those are only three of the things that I retained from her, along with real love of education, love of working with people, love of children in particular, But she took me to this place in Washington, D.C. called Junior Village, where she had gotten this job. Sort of by stealth, she was able to write the exam that she needed to write to be hired as a teacher in the Washington, D.C. school system, even though she was legally blind, as I am. I have 20/20 vision with my glasses on. She got the job, and one of the first things that she did there was to start, she had a classroom inside, but she also started a classroom outside with working a garden. And this was not just about getting the kids out into the sunshine and the rain, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself, right? But it was actually about education. Her whole curriculum was structured around that garden. It really was. I only bought part of it back. But if anybody cares to thumb through some of this stuff later on, there's a little article in here that was written in the Washington Post in 1967 about her and her classroom, and sort of tacked on to some other family history stuff. But shows a picture of the kids that was taken by the photographer from the Washington Post in the garden there, and it talks very specifically in this short article. I think there was actually a longer article about her outdoor classroom and how she used it to work with kids. So the answer to the question, even though I've expanded it a little bit and given you a little bit more of the background, it's much deeper than that. The answer to the question is I got my real initial exposure to working with people in an outdoor setting came through my mother, who was a teacher. And I am eternally grateful for that. She actually visited Blairstown. I don't know if you were there any of those summers.
I remember that.
But somehow or another, I think it was Melissa who got this idea of a garden for our kids that were coming from Newark and New York and Trenton, a teaching garden. And it's like when my mother was there, she's like, wow, that's so fantastic. And as soon as she heard the kids' voices, the laughter, the yelling, all of that, she was like back in her element. And she couldn't see how to walk down the hill from the cabin, but we got her down the hill so she could be with the kids, just sitting on the porch listening to them. So I don't know if any of you all have had or are having those sorts of experiences with close family or even loved ones or even a mentor, but I hope you are having the experience of having someone engender in you, well, it's already in you, but sparking the fire a little bit more to really engage in education and to engage in the relationship with people, as my mom did with me. So.
I love that story. I'm a mother, 3 kids, and so and we have the Kid Friends here, which is another great tradition that the Northeast region has, and so it really inspires me that even in our families we plant those seeds. And so that seed was planted in you, and as you were kind of journeying, what would you say were some of the experiences that gave it the water and the sunlight that it needed to blossom?
Okay, can you guys stay for another couple of weeks? And we were talking about this in the room with the fireplace. All of the experiences in my life have contributed to me becoming the person that I am, and I'm still becoming. It's not over yet. At least I hope I walk out of here and am able to come back here next year to see the next person, and the year after that, and the year after that. But you never know. You just never know. But so many experiences from that early childhood experience, and I guess I could talk about other people that have mentored me that's another question that's come up, and I think you wanted to get into a little bit. And along with my mother, certainly my father. A very unique story in his own right. My father died at the age of 106. Got it documented. Hopefully I got that gene from him, because he also did not have the Alzheimer's gene that my mother had. So, Dad, if there's one thing, give me that gene, because he was, he went into a nursing home the last 3 years of his life. And that was only because he got mugged and he wouldn't let go of his wallet. And he got pushed down. So he hit his head, and from that point, it was downhill. But certainly nurtured by him and taught some things that you wouldn't expect necessarily to be taught by your father. And then of you hem a pair of pants. We don't wear hems in our pants. Well, sometimes I do. Can you do that? Excellent. Excellent. My father was a tailor, had his own dry cleaning business. Can any of you turn a collar? Do any of you know what it is to turn a collar? Somebody knows what it is to turn a collar. Okay, ask that guy what it is to turn a collar. I can turn a collar. Because my father, we sort of get these images of the sort of roles that people play. Men do not sew. Well, yes, they do. Yes, they do if you're a tailor. Or yes, they do sometimes if they want to have clothes to wear. So.
Hendricks, where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Washington, D.C. Washington,
Got some
D.C.
people from D.C.
All right. I can't ask what exit, but I can ask what northwest, northeast, in the Beltway or outside the Beltway. Yeah, I grew up there and went to public schools there through high school, where some of my other mentors I met. I told someone this story. Charlotte Bostic, my music teacher. Again, something experiential that confirmed within me that I had a contribution to make, And I told someone else the shortened version of why I went to Western High School, which is now Duke Ellington School for the Performing Arts, as opposed to the high school in my neighborhood, and which was the high school that my sister went to, and McKinley High School, where my brother went to. Well, they were both brilliant, and I was the youngest of three. And talking about intentionality and making decisions and having experiences, that is probably the second experience of making a conscious decision to do something that I remember that had a very, very influential impact on my life. I was not going to go to Roosevelt High School and be Teresa's little brother and expect to be getting A's, because that wasn't in the cards for me. And I couldn't go to McKinley High School and be Clinton's little brother, where he was getting A+. So I made a conscious decision to go there, and met Charlotte Bostic, met Vilma Montiel, my Spanish teacher, met so many other people, and met some friends who I'm still friends with today that have shared experiences growing up. But those sorts of experiences we all have. Sometimes we don't realize that we're having them, right? You don't realize that, wow, this is an experience, and wow, this is really important. But sometimes you do, and it might be years later that you do, and that comes through a process of reflection.
Well, and I see a pattern here. You making a conscious choice to really forge your own path is something that I have seen in you, in my relationship with you, just not being afraid to take the road less traveled.
Yeah.
So
it can be crazy. It can be not lucrative. But, I think that's one of the things that you know, I've been able to do because of the circumstances of my life that I've built in, that I've chosen, and that I am. So, you know, everybody's circumstance and life forming is going to be different, and hopefully it'll be beautiful and fulfilling. But yeah, I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. Making some conscious decisions. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about more conscious decisions?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know you through Blairstown,
Okay.
and you were the executive director, and
Yeah.
you come from Princeton. So maybe talk a little bit about that journey and what you feel you got out of that experience.
How did I get to Blairstown? Well, I got to, again, I have to give you the less than 2 week version or the 2 hour version. I got to Blairstown because I needed a job. I needed a job. I'd come back from a year, I'll back you up here. I come back from a year working for a peace organization in the Netherlands called the International Fellowship of Reconciliation. Went over there for a year, wanted to stay a lifetime, but had to come back. I had to come back. So came back from that. I left the job at the seminary that I'd had for 9 years as director of field education, another experiential form of learning, because I made a conscious decision that I was not going to get ordained and that I did not want to have this nice paying cushy job for 30 years. Am I crazy or what? But I made that decision. I'm not going to do this for 30 years. I'm not going to get ordained. I was under care. Some of you might not know that terminology. I was under care of the National Capital Presbytery for 17 years. I do not hold a record. There are people that have been under care or in the process of becoming ordained longer than I was, until the point that I decided I can't get ordained. I can't make that decision, because the Presbyterian Church at the time was not ordaining gay and lesbian people. I just could not do it. Many people were doing it. They were doing it. I just couldn't do it. Can't do it. So I left that job.
Yeah.
And I guess what? I made probably about 85% less money that year that I was in the Netherlands. And I had 185% fabulous experience.
Yeah.
We were trying to stop a war, the First World War, the First Gulf War. We were not successful. E4, none of us were, but we tried. And for that year, I helped them write a little program, which is still in existence, called Nonviolence Education and Training, which uses experiential techniques to train people. You can Google it, you'll find it. Train people in countries around the world in the processes of nonviolent education, nonviolent techniques. And it was tremendous. How did I get that job? Well, I saw the paperwork going across my desk as director of field education at Princeton Seminary. Knew I wasn't going to be there for 30 years. Thought, hey, you know, I've been telling all these young ministers, go out and get some practical experience. I set up great experiences for them. Take a little bit of your own medicine. Do some of your own stuff. And on the bottom of the Fellowship of Reconciliation letterhead, where they were requesting me to help them find an intern, was the address of E4 in the Netherlands. Hey, I can help you find a student here in Nyack, New York, where you're located. And by the way, what's the name of the general secretary over in Alkmaar in the Netherlands? One thing led to another. They had no money. I said, I can write grants. I can help you find some money. Okay, we can't pay you much. We can give you a little stipend. Come over, and I had one of the best years of my life. So after that was over, I had to come back, and didn't have a job. Boy, is that scary? How many of you don't have jobs right now? How many of you are worried about having a job in the future? Yeah, it can be really scary. Enjoy those moments if you can. Because when you get the job, wow, it can be enjoyable. It will be enjoyable, especially if you're doing experiential education, outdoor adventure. But enjoy the moments of freedom and then keep working toward the responsibility. But I came back, went back to school at the seminary. Not intending to get ordained, I knew that was done, but maybe get a PhD, maybe. And again, sitting on my stoop on a early spring day, once the weather was warm enough for me to sit on my stoop in front of my house, opened up the paper, and there was a job listed in the paper that was for the Princeton Blairstown Center. And I don't think people find jobs through the papers anymore, but if you happen to be in a library and are looking and there's a paper there, open it up. You never know what might be in there. Sometimes people still do advertise. So anyway, one thing led to another, and I wound up at Blairstown and as executive director, and spent 11 years there. It was a wonderful experience. Still is a wonderful organization. And it really, for me, in my experience, was about the people. And to some extent, a very important extent, was about this very special place that the people actually brought into life, into existence. Just a phenomenal sort of, not quite Shangri-La, because I know that there was stuff going on, and the executive director doesn't know everything that goes on, but I knew a lot more than you think I knew. So long as nobody's getting killed, so long as we're holding on to our basic foundational principles, which are very important. People need to have fun. People need to blow off a little bit of steam. I don't need to be hanging around, looking over your shoulder, because I trust you.
Yeah,
I trust you, and particularly I trust you with the kids.
Yeah.
I tell you, you talk about crying. Okay, so everything I know about outdoor adventure, experiential education, I learned from my Blairstown staff. Okay, I was a Boy Scout, I knew a little bit about backpacking and that sort of thing. But in terms of ropes courses and carabiners and, low ropes courses and belaying and that sort of thing, I learned from you. And I learned from Melissa. And I learned from Amy. Do you remember Amy
Of course,
Lichtenstein?
yeah.
Amy Lichtenstein, I'd never belayed before. I'd never, been on belay prior to that. She was how tall?
5'4".
5'4". How much did she weigh?
She was this big.
She was this big. And we had a dam. The dam is still there. Holds back we call it a lake, it's a pond. Beautiful. 35 foot. Well, that looked to me like, 135 feet. And she's gonna belay me, and I'm like 200 pounds, probably more, down this 35-foot thing. And I'm like, you're gonna belay me? And this was during staff training. I was being trained. This was my very first summer there. And she said, yep, I got you. I got you. And I said, Amy, the only thing I want to do is look into your eyes. That was the connection of trust for me. So I climbed over that fence and lowered my derriere into thin air. And then they couldn't, made it down the bottom, and I couldn't, it's like, I gotta do this again. Gotta do it again. So, but She, those memories stand out for me.
As soon as you pulled that out, I started crying.
Well,
You have to
this
explain.
was not Amy's invention, this was Claire's invention.
No.
Claire Emery, if you ever have the chance to be going through Montana and want to meet a fantastic human being, stop and say hello to Claire. She let me and everybody there know, especially our kids, that they are artists. I said, nah, I can't draw anything. Come on. Well, all of these pictures and even the words that people chose to speak to me are artistry, because it's very moving. Very, very moving. It's so weird. I didn't know where this was. I didn't know where it was, and so I'm like, okay, I'm trying to grab some things. I told you I was going to bring some touchstones, and where is it? And so I open up this box, and there it is. I've been putting stuff. It's random stuff in here. I'm like, whoa! I am supposed to take this with me to this conversation. Wow. Kata. You remember Kata, right?
Yes, I do.
Well, sometimes when you are on a staff, you meet fabulous people. And sometimes those fabulous people come out of situations that they don't create and that could actually wind up destroying their lives. Do you remember that? Katie got accused of doing something really horrid in New York City, where he was from. And I found that part of my work as an executive director was not just to stay at the camp. Couldn't do it. We actually started taking counselors into New York and to
Philly. I went to Philly.
To Philly. It's like, why are we doing this? Because, you think it's risky for them to come out here from those cities and be like overwhelmed with all this. Well, how about you getting over that experience yourself, and let them teach you something about their experience living and growing up in some of the most challenging, that would be dangerous, most challenging, that would be heartbreaking neighborhoods and families even. Well, I knew Katie's mom, and there was no way that I was not going to be there. So how do you learn that in outdoor adventure courses that you need as a counselor, as a leader, to go to court with somebody who's been accused of something horrid, and then to find out that, yes, sometimes the justice system is broken, and it tries literally to break people unjustly. There's no way he did what they accused him of doing. And long story short, we found out that the particular assistant DA had done something that he should not have done to make this accusation. But anyway, I'm going through this thing, and it just reminds me of some of the experiences that we had that are really, sort of beyond the pale, if you will, of outdoor adventure, experiential education. But I feel, because we're not teachers so much as we are relators, and that the exchange, the growth happens in people because of the way in which we relate, that we need to be in those places too sometimes.
And for me, Blairstown was a complete intentional experiment in community. And community meaning there's not a part of you that you have to leave behind that door. So many of our communities only let part of you through the door.
Yeah.
And you have made so many intentional choices in your life when there were communities that said, well, we'll ordain you, but don't
You can't
bring,
be that.
but don't bring that through the door. And
Uh-huh.
and your intentional choices, Hendricks, to come to Blairstown where you could be yourself, where you could be a gay, African-American, male, former theologian. When I met him, he had a bumper sticker on his car that said, "My karma ran over my dogma." and for you to just so intentionally come to a place and bring all of yourself, for me, allowed us to do that as well.
Absolutely.
And that's the power in
Well,
that
yeah,
community.
and we talk about modeling, I don't wear all of these things on my sleeve, and I don't, pound the drum, but I think the way in which you're able to be authentic is so critically important for any work that you do, especially the work that you do as one who relates to people, whether it's young people or older people, and one who would wear the mantle of teacher. I think I put it in that little thing that got printed. My mother, said, and it sounds so trite when you say it, to thine own self be true, and know thyself. It sounds trite when you just say it like that, but then, if you're honest, and you really think about it, those are two of the hardest things you or anybody else will ever do. And it doesn't happen overnight, and it's maybe never finished happening, right? It's a lifelong process. So, intentionality, I was saying to someone else, about a third of my maybe about a quarter of my Facebook friends are former staff from Blairstown and campers.
Yeah.
And campers.
Well, and Blairstown had and still has that very unique process in outdoor education of creating indigenous leaders, if you will, to bring kids from urban environments and give them the outdoor education tools. I mean, some of the greatest counselors we had have been working campers, then work campers, and and I think you brought so much of that to the center.
Yeah. Well, I think the center, the camp, as it was called back in 1908, had a lot of that really strong intentionality, meaningfulness, and purpose going back to 1908. So we sort of, we didn't put the mechanics and the lingo and the language and the research around it that later on people like Josh Miner, who is the founder of modern day outdoor experience in the United States, and who, by the way, went to Princeton, class of 43, and who, by the way, I was trying to find a picture of me and him when he came to visit Blairstown, but I could not find that particular newsletter that he was in. But yeah, it's, I think some of that goes back even farther, that this intentionality of, working with people in the challenging context of outdoor adventure, but also in the challenging context of Newark and New York and Philadelphia, taking counselors to those places. And one summer, did we do this sort of like as part of staff training? Didn't we put you in the middle of a city without a whole lot of money?
Yes, we did a little urban expedition And we were in Philly, but my reward was that my group that went to Philly got to hear Sweet Honey in the Rock sing in a church basement in Philadelphia.
What?
Yeah. Thank
I didn't
you.
hear about that.
Cool, that's great.
It was powerful.
Fantastic.
So, I know that I have valued, sometimes in retrospect, learning the hard way. I'm wondering if you could share with us some of those kind of hard-learned lessons as you've been journeying through life. Some of the experiences you've had that have been really challenging, but that have maybe made you stronger and wiser.
Yeah, the one that comes actually immediately to mind was not at Blairstown. I'm sure that there were some there, but yeah, I can talk about one at Blairstown as well. But I will talk about that one. But this was before Blairstown. This was actually at the seminary when I was director of field education there. And, you know, I was wrestling with all of these things, including whether I should get ordained or not. And long story short again, because this spans like at least 2 years, 2 semesters, or maybe 3 semesters of 1 year that I was there. And this is something that I think, you know, as a leader, we all should be thoughtful about. I had a young, actually she wasn't that young. She was probably at that time, I was only in my, I left the seminary when I was 39 and I started there when I was 31. So I was probably about 36 or 37. I wasn't too bad looking. I had this one student who sort of like took a liking to me, let me just put it that way, and pressed and pressed and pressed, not physically, but just like, you know, just went beyond what was appropriate for her. I was not at a point then that I could just tell her, you're a nice person, but I'm not attracted to you physically. You know, I think women are beautiful. I like men. I think some men are beautiful too. But I'm not attracted to you. And I just couldn't tell her that. And it wound up being the sort of thing that just, again, the backpack was too heavy. I wasn't taking the truth out and saying, here's the truth. Here's my truth. You need to know this. And it sort of put me in a little bit of a tailspin. And I walked out of a conference with her feeling sort of violated. It was weird. It's like, what? Me? I felt that. So I guess the lesson that I had to learn was that, hey, listen, you know, people need to, certainly in professional situations, understand what the boundaries are. And even if you are, you know, because sometimes people find their mates in the profession in which they're working. You need to be very clear about that and how that works professionally. And so that was one very hard lesson that I learned while at Princeton Seminary. And it is so much more liberating and free to be able to know thyself and to speak your truth than to tell half-truths and not the whole story.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's another person in this room, I think, that met their spouse at the Princeton Blairstown Summit. Yes. That's what Hendricks is referring to. I met my husband at the Princeton Blairstown Summit.
Yeah.
So it's a special place for me.
Yeah, and I've actually married, I mean, I didn't marry
Yeah.
the staff member, but I performed
Yep.
Alex and Kai's wedding. Alex didn't meet Kai there, but yeah, several.
In
Melissa
Chicago.
and Mark and Polly and, you know.
Chris?
So
Yeah.
in terms of intentional community and relationship, I think Blairstown has it hands down. So,
So you were talking about another experience that was really challenging for you at Blairstown.
yeah, it's hard to really like come up with things. We had our challenges. We had, this goes to the teaching and relating aspect. We oftentimes all the time tried our best to work with every young person that came there. And I don't think you were a part of the High Quest program, or were you?
It was starting when I was
Yeah.
on my way. I think the
Yeah.
last summer I was there, it started.
Our first year we tried, or the first year of that particular program, we got it off the ground, and we had a great experience overall, and did a lot of good things where we were actually putting more of the academics, like that learning classroom, outdoor learning classroom, into our adventure program, and then for 3 weeks, and then taking the kids and the counselors to their home communities. Well, there was one young guy there who just had a lot of stuff going on in his life, which we knew some of. We didn't know the extent of it, and I'll make this very short because I think you're asking me about things that I learned. I learned that people are going to continue to grow and change and hopefully develop, even if they don't accept the resources that we bring to them, that we share with them. Young guy, we basically had to take home. Had to take him home. Couldn't manage what we were offering him. Couldn't accept what we were offering him. And my job tended to be not the henchman, but the driver of the hearse. Driving the kid back to Newark. I think partly because I felt very comfortable driving to Newark, sometimes at night, with a kid that needed to be taken home then. And sometimes because it's just, how it fell out. I took that responsibility, it's so weird, kid is so agitated, and, all of the intervention, all of the therapy, all of the talk that we are trying to, give this guy isn't getting through. So there's something major going on with him. And I saw this more than once. Somehow or another, as soon as they get in the car, it's like they're asleep. It's like, wow, what? You're bouncing off the walls here. And as soon as you get in the car and we're out the gate of the camp, they're like snoring. I'm like, what is that about?
Some kind of release.
Maybe it's the relief.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the release. Okay, I'm getting to go home. Well, anyway, long story short, we set this up as an ongoing program where they, as rising ninth graders, could come back 4 years if they wanted to. He didn't come back, didn't want to come back, lost touch with him. Don't know what's happening to this guy. Well, Facebook. So the lesson learned is that people will continue to grow. Sometimes they will get on a good path or a fairly good path and make it through to adulthood. I get this friend request from this guy. I'm like, what? This is like at least 15 years later.
Wow.
And he says, the first thing I want to do is apologize for my behavior. I'm like, oh, you talk about crying. I'm crying in Facebook now.
I love that story.
It's amazing. So
Yeah.
I think that's a lesson learned that, you put the effort in that, you've been gifted to put in. And, I saw this so many times that the staff that I work with at Blairstown just poured themselves into people.
Yeah.
I spent more time crying looking at some of the interactions that you guys were having with campers. Tough situations. And it was just amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that was before you even became a social worker.
Yeah.
You probably got even better at, just
Love kids.
Love it. There you
Love
go.
kids.
There you go. But it was like amazing to see this. So,
Yeah.
but the hard lesson or the lesson learned is that sometimes I guess a couple things. You can't help everybody all the time. And sometimes those that you can't help are going to do their own thing and they're going to keep on a not so good track, or they're going to find the track that,
Yeah.
or the thing that connects them together. So,
I love that.
yeah.
That's the planting seeds that your mom was talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So if you're looking for immediate gratification as an outdoor adventure, experiential education leader, you get some. I get a lot just being here. But, sometimes it's not going to come immediately.
Yeah.
And many times you're not even going to know.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the mystery and the wonder and the scariness of it. It's like you just put the good stuff out there and pray.
Okay, so that's the perfect segue. I'm a preacher's kid, right? So
Okay.
you spent a lot of time in the seminary.
I did.
How has spirituality informed your perspective on experiential education?
Wow.
Or vice versa, maybe?
How has it? Yeah, both ways. Yeah, goes both ways. Again, that's one of those things that, for me, is a lifelong process of integration. I know that, that there is a spirit here someplace. It's part of me, along with my intellect, along with my sexuality, along with my politics. It's all in there, and I'm still working on it. So it's a matter of me continuing the process of growth and change and learning, and putting myself in situations where I am growing in all of those dimensions. And, even though I didn't get ordained and become the Presbyterian pastor of a suburban Presbyterian 4,000-member church as I planned to do, my experience at Princeton Seminary as a student was liberating. It was, education is liberating. It should be. If it's not, then it ain't education.
Yeah.
We're learning the wrong stuff if it's not liberating, if it's not opening you up.
What about it was most liberating?
Oh, jeez. People.
Yeah.
People, being in contact with people, being in relationship with people, hearing people's stories, sort of taking a step outside of a structure that I had been in and being able to look at that structure, even though, this is seminary and it's church, being able to look at it critically and look at myself at the same time critically. Oh gosh, we're talking the 1970s now, so this is a long time ago, but there was a whole lot of stuff percolating in our culture in the 1970s, early 70s, and into the 80s. And, the word seminary, I believe the root is actually in the Latin word for seed. I believe the word seminary is actually translated seed plot. I could be wrong about this, but anybody know Latin? Come on, take some classics here. No, I think that's what it means. It was a seed plot. It was a seed bed, at least at the time that I was in seminary,
Yeah.
of critical, intellectual, spiritual, political thinking and rethinking. And again, there were a couple of professors there that were brave enough, even in the context of this seminary, this Christian institution, to ask questions of me in all these things and not give me the answer, their answer.
That sounds like experiential education.
It does. It was.
How to-
And even my field work as a student was very influential. That's, I went there thinking I'm going to be this Presbyterian pastor, 4,000 member suburban congregation. My first field placement, talking about things coming full circle, was at a church in Newark, New Jersey. This was just a few years after the riots of 67 and 68. It was a congregation that was struggling to be, was an interracial, somewhat interracial congregation. So there was a lot of stuff that was percolating and giving me the opportunity to think about it and to reflect on. So
I just got so struck when you said that, at just kind of the historical miracle that is this conversation. You know, when you just think about how much society has evolved and changed. We're sitting here. I mean, sometimes growing up, when you're talking about what's percolating in the 70s and the 80s, I was in elementary school, so now that was percolating. But for me, but to be aware of those patterns in history, and even now, a lot of people talk about what are the membership benefits of being in the Association for Experiential Education, and I get more swept away by the vision, which is to contribute to making a more just and compassionate world by transforming education. A more just and compassionate. And honestly, for me, you're one of my mentors in that vision. And I think we lose sight of that vision. That's what we're talking about.
But it's right there, you can get it back, by putting yourself in experiences that will open you up to that, speaking of that definition. And, you asked the question, how has spirituality played a part? And, well, it has, not only at the seminary, but definitely as a part of AEE for the number of years that I'm not currently a member. Sorry.
Valerie, sign him up. She's right back there.
But it's not because of any distance, it's just that, I've been doing other things for the past few years and knew that I couldn't afford to go to the conferences. So,
we'll get you back.
Those experiences that I think I had in this context and in the context with AEE take the opportunity to be on a conference committee. And Cheryl Swartz is convener again? What's that about? Cheryl, tell her I said hi. She is so funny. At least she was then. I hope she is still now. We had so much fun. But through NAWA, another one of the, what do you call them now?
Natives?
I know what that is.
Oh, well, I don't know if everyone here knows what
it's not a professional group.
Oh,
it's
affiliation
group. So natives, Africans, Asians, Latinos, Latinas, and allies. That, for me, that work was really very, very powerful and spirit, if you will, led. And there I don't know if they're still doing, active stuff, but we did some really cool stuff And I think some of it might be coming back. We had a 5-year commitment to go to Rosebud Reservation. Lemoyne LaPointe, who is, he's probably a better member of AEE than I am. Sorry, but just a wonderful human being. And if you have the opportunity to have that sort of experience as a part of the array of experiences that you have, I'd say take it. Just a deeply moving, deeply spiritual time of engagement and reflection. And so that's been important for me too. And Lemoyne saw the announcement of this, and he calls me up, and I'm like, wow, cool, are you going to be there? He said, no, I can't be there, but I just want to touch base. And that's the way I feel about AEE. It's like the circle is not unbroken, will not be broken. It will not be broken because those sorts of things have been there for years and years and have meaning in my life. So.
Yeah. And I think traditions like this talk really nurture those connections and really maintain them. Just the names you've mentioned as we've been sitting here has been really special, just to hear those names.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, I probably just reading through this and looking at some of the newsletters that we put out that through Blairstown, that spark those memories of the people and the experiences that we had. And I think in many, many situations are still happening wherever they are. I mean, I just am really very fortunate to have had the array of experiences as an educator, a social worker, an administrator. I haven't talked about the stuff of administration. If you love it, do it. I sort of tended to love it. The sort of nitty-gritty, though sometimes it could be a little bit of a pain working with the people that give you money and the people that control the organization and that don't know exactly what the organization does and is, but then sometimes when they get it, that is so good. We tried our hardest to get the president of the university to come up and get on a ropes course, but she wouldn't do it. So. But anyway, maybe next year with a new president.
That's right.
We'll try again.
So I think I want to be mindful of our time because I know that part of this tradition has been to give you guys a chance to really talk with Hendricks also. But I have one more question. I don't know. I guess, you started off talking about your mom and aging and kind of where are you at in your journey now, and what is your current adventure that you're on in your life right now?
Well, you answered it. Where am I at? I'm still on the journey. And, I really do hope that I have that longevity gene and that no Alzheimer's gene from my father. Because I would like to live to be old and somewhat coherent. But that might not happen, They're sort of constant reminders daily. Maybe you don't get them daily, but if you look out the window or if you read the paper, you get constant reminders that, there's not a guarantee of tomorrow. So where I am on the journey is trying my best to be in the present moment. Anybody ever heard of Thich Nhat Hanh? Okay, if you've heard of him, great. If you have the book that I've read numbers of his books, came across him when I was over at E4 because he's a Buddhist and E4 has a very strong strain of Buddhism in it. But there's a little book called Peace is Every Step. I use that book because it has these little writings. What's the one that you like?
Oh, about eating the orange.
Eating my orange. Or eating my cookie. Or washing dishes. Or one of my favorites that I used with staff and kids, look into your hand. So there's this little writing, I could almost recite it, but I can't. But those sort of things you can put in your back pocket or put in your backpack and take with you. And other things for reading with young people or with older people. But I'm trying very hard to be in the present moment and to enjoy it and to not necessarily predict where I will be 20 years from now, because that might, if I make that prediction 20 years from now, it could be that that's all that I get, when if I made it for like 40 years, I could have gotten 40 years, which would put me up close to my father's age when he died. Does that logic make any sense? No. But that's one thing that I'm really trying to do. In addition to that, though, I do have to be present in my community, and I'm doing that by volunteering with things like the Princeton Senior Resource Center on the board there, and I seem to tend to cover the spectrum here, and on the board of Advocates for Children of New Jersey. Those sorts of commitments and interests are always going to be there. And some of the things that I'm doing now, I think I might not have mentioned this to you, but I mentioned it to a couple of people, is really going through the material that I have. This is, just a few things. I mentioned to someone yesterday or today that one of my commitments is to, and you're supposed to share these sort of things with people, right? When you set a goal for yourself, you're supposed to share it to them, and you all can.
It's a big group to share with.
Yeah. Check me on it next year, see how I'm coming along, okay? I've spent some time over the last several years really collating the rat patness. Who did I mention to that I have, for my own communication with my mother, sort of back full circle now, about 300 letters that we exchanged from the day that I left Washington, D.C. to go to Defiance College in Ohio, where I spent 4 years. I don't know if that sort of stuff happens anymore. Yeah. Do you save your text messages from mom? I don't know if it does.
This is a good call for snail mail right here.
Oh gosh, let's keep the post office alive and start writing. That's just our communication. And I've managed to collate that, but I keep finding other letters. I've managed to collate most of her exchanges between Josephine Sherrard Davis and Clinton Turner Davis, which began in about 1943. And then they got married and they stopped writing to each other, but then there's a whole lot of other stuff to go through. And there's something there.
Yeah.
There's a lot there that I have been intentionally working on and will continue to work on.
That's very exciting.
Yeah. And was there more to that question that you want to know how I feed myself?
There is no right answer.
Right now, okay, there's an experiential connection there. It's something I think the creative, entrepreneurial educator has already thought about long before I did. and that is, and I saw it in John's workshop this morning, the connection between, and you got to be careful here, between experiential education, academics, and corporate money-making, profit-making entities. I know that's been a part of AEE and outdoor adventure for years, but there's something to that I would encourage just about everybody to explore. And I would definitely, and maybe even if it's not in the experiential outdoor adventure area, being an entrepreneur, creating new things. Can I say it? Okay, I spent 35 years not making money running nonprofits. Making money, you can give it away if that's what you want to do with the money you've made. There's something about that, and I think that there is actually even something about that in the social justice arena that needs to be explored more. There is so much untapped intelligence in communities that you work with, that I work with. And yeah, maybe I can't make it to get a PhD or 5 master's degrees or whatever, but I might have a good idea for a business that I could put together with some help from somebody who knows how to put that together. Or maybe there's some aspect of my program, maybe some little aspect of the program that I'm putting this kid through, that kid, if you get the idea, could take that aspect and turn it into something that is productive and useful, and maybe even put money on the table to buy food. So I would encourage people to, so what did I do? It's not connected. I've always wanted to have my own business. I've had an interest in real estate. I got my license. It might not be for you, but that's something that I was interested in doing. I just wanted to do it to see if I could do it. And lo and behold, after not being in a classroom setting for 25 years, I passed the daggum exam the first time through and I got my license. So, but that's, it's, who said something about trying new things? I'm trying something very new and something that's unrelated to outdoor adventure, experiential education, but it's not unrelated to social work.
Or risk-taking.
Or risk-taking. It's not. I have had the opportunity to use my social work skills tremendously, and it's been fun. So that's how I'm putting bread on the table now. If anybody wants to buy a house in Princeton,
We work that in. I like how we work that in.
Or anybody else should go. Princeton Homes and Gardens is my website.
Nice. Good pitch, good plug.
There you go. So, and there might be other things. But I don't know.
Because you keep walking through the world so consciously, Hendricks.
Step by step.
Step by step.
Step by step. So if anybody's going to be in Princeton on June the 13th, I'm going to have some sort of party. I'll probably put you to work around this date, June 13th, 30 years ago, I bought this shack of a house. There is a metaphor in here. It really looked like a shack. But I saw the potential in it. And it doesn't look like that now. And I couldn't afford to buy it now if I had to. but probably going to have some sort of celebration or continuation of that. So if you're in Princeton on June 13th, or the Saturday around that day, drop by and, at least have a beer. So,
Do you have anything else in your magic box that you want to share?
how much time do you have? I don't want to take a
No
long time
idea.
talking. Somebody tell us what
I'm
time
just
it
the
is.
interviewer, not the timekeeper.
8:30 for me.
Yeah.
Okay, and we need to be out of here in 15 minutes,
Well,
right?
do you want to take some questions from folks?
Sure. Yeah, I brought these other newsletters. I was going to read some of them, not the whole thing. How boring would that be to read the newsletter to you? Well, maybe not so boring. But the one that, there's something here too. I was in the bookstore today, and there were a couple of books about experiential education and the process of writing. We need to be working on that with the kids that come out of some of the schools that we have in New Jersey as well. So, but this is something that I wrote that sort of, again, will tie it full circle for me, having started with my mother. And we did a newsletter. I don't know if you guys do it in your thing, where you're working, but we did one at least twice a year. And this one was called Spring of 1996, Miracle Workers, Things My Mother's, plural, taught me. One of the most vivid memories of my childhood was seeing the film The Miracle Worker. Many of you will recall the story of teacher Anne Sullivan and the blind, deaf, and mute Helen Keller, respectively portrayed by Anne Bancroft and a young Patty Heath. It was a powerful account of the transformation of their lives through an intense personal encounter. Looking back on this film over many years, I still recall their struggle for life, direction, and meaningful relationship, and the miraculous outcome for Keller, whose family held little hope for her, seeing her as unteachable and wild. Wow. I recall being deeply touched. The lump in my throat was an indication of my own moral development. As I saw Helen Keller's life and those around her transformed by the power of faithful, persistent work and commitment to being in relationship, no matter the cost, on the part of a teacher. As I reflect back on my life, I find that I've been touched by many Anne Sullivans. There was Charlotte Bostic, my high school music teacher, who showed me that my singing voice could communicate in ways that are perceptible to the ears of the soul. And there was Vilma Montiel, my Spanish teacher, who opened my eyes to the rich beauty of cross-cultural engagement and understanding. And there was Florence Moore, my mother's sister, who through her own vocation as a social worker taught me the blessing of service to others. And there was, and still is at the time, Josephine Sherrard Davis, who, though physically blinded by glaucoma, taught me to see the world filled with possibilities, promise, and purpose through the eyes of faith, and to help create by healing touch that very world for myself, my family, and friends. All of these women and many more were miracle workers in my life. I am certain that my experience is shared by many in this world. As you will read in this issue of the Outlook, there are miracle workers who bring powerful gifts of leadership, knowledge, perception, and care to the world, to the work at the center. The children with whom we work, no matter their background, all need dedicated, creative, and challenging role models and educators like Anne Sullivan, Mary McLeod Bethune, Harriet Tubman, and Amy, Deb, Jenny, Liz, Beth, Karen, Darcy, Sarah, Kate, and so many more in their lives to help them open their eyes, ears, minds, hearts, and souls to the gifts of the world around them and within. And I would also add my friend Christine.
I'm supposed to make you cry. That's what the interviewer does. So, what questions do you guys have for Hendricks?
Ben.
So I just have a comment. First, just before you read that, you mentioned seeing the book in the bookstore on writing and experiential education, and my mind is exploding because that book is authored by Leslie Rapperly, who you probably don't remember, but was actually at Blairstown with the staff in 2002, your last summer there.
Oh
so as you made that reference, I was like, oh my God, he doesn't even know that it's like actually all connected back to Blairstown. And she was a student at Gettysburg with Hutch, who was our PICU winner last night, so just a crazy connection to the whole thing. But my question, which is that as Christine was describing sort of your intentionality and all these choices you've made, I wonder if there's lots of people at different stages and making a lot of choices and trying to be intentional, if there's any advice you would give to those of us still sort of younger in our careers and pursuing, trying to make intentional choices.
Wow. And thank you, because Ben, I think you're the person that sort of started this ball rolling for me to be here. And I appreciate your thoughtfulness and thinking of me. And not to be trite and not to be too short, but you know, I can't think of anything better than what my mother said to me and offered to me. And I don't know if people have that sort of experience with their parents or with their mentors. Now, to your own self, be true and know yourself. Know yourself and do what you need to do. Doesn't necessarily have to go be therapy, but if that helps, do it. Get out. Have experiences that you can add, that will add to your understanding, your appreciation. You know, travel. There's another little book that I used in working with the staff and more so with kids at Blairstown. That is Maya Angelou's Wouldn't Take Nothing for My Journey Now. You know, travel. She has this little thing about travel. So, you know, a couple of people told me they were planning to take cross-country trips. Do it. You know, find those special places or those places that you don't even know are special and go and spend a little bit of time there. You know, so you have a range of experiences that will inform your being, will inform you as, and you take yourself, you take your experience to those places too.
Yeah.
You know, some of the best things that I have done have been, you know, like internships. You know, I took an internship when I was your age, 19, from the Defiance College. Went to Americus, Georgia, and spent a winter term there working with some tall, lanky guy. This is 1969, 1970, on a little farm in Americus, Georgia, Coinanea Farm. That guy's name was Millard Fuller. It was like, okay.
Wow.
And that was before he, you know, my job, work with your hands. That's another good one, too. How many of you can do something with your hands besides ballet and those courses? Do you know how to hold a paintbrush? Okay, good. Work with your hands is good. But yeah, digging stumps out of the ground to build houses at Coinanea was my job along with some other college students. First houses built by the guy who would become Mr. Habitat for Humanity. Yeah. So, yeah, be true to yourself, know yourself, get out there and do it. Do you. Somebody said that? Was it you? Do you. Find you and then do you.
Other questions? Are you going to sing us a song?
I could try.
Well, you had your guitar. I just want to create
Yeah, I thought it would be
space
a
for
good,
whatever
you know,
you want to
again,
share.
if you want if there's time. Are we going into this open mic thing? After?
Yeah, you could open it.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I would share with you, I'll give you a gift of a song. That would be great. I'm sort of tethered in here. I'm gonna have to sit down here. I think that's what I'm gonna do.
Sit just right on the
Because
stage.
I can't, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Did it hold its tuning that I tried very hard to put in? Not too bad. Let's see. Okay. So, I'm going to give you this as a gift from me to you. No strings attached. You could read into it whatever meaning you want to read into it, or not. Or later on you could ask me the meaning that I put into it, or not. Or you can just, listen.
Got options.
You got options. Anybody recognize it? La 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 la. Oh, la 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 la. Amazing grace, amazing grace, so sweet, so bad, saved a wretch like me. Well, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, 'twas grace at all. My heart to feel, and grace my fears relieve. Oh, how precious dear the grace appear. Oh, the hour I first believed. Oh, how amazing grace. Through many dangers, toils and snares, I have already come. Well, tears, grace has brought me safe thus far, and graces will lead me home. Well, when we've been home 10,000 years brighter, shining as the sun. Well, we've no last days to sing God's praise. Then when we first begun, such amazing grace. Oh, amazing grace. How sweet the sound.
And truly planting a seed with all of us, taking us to seminary. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. We will be having open mic and story jam here in this space in just a moment, so we'll just be handing things over to the amazing James.
Amazing James, I'm not sure about that.
There you go. Absolutely.
Well, good evening, folks. How are you all doing? Thank you